Hello, everyone. So great to be with you tonight. Let's begin by setting the most excellent motivation in the universe, the motivation of bodhicitta that says, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. This motivation that has two aspects, the object of attainment, which is, may I attain Buddhahood, and then the intended objective, which is for the sake of all sentient beings. So the reason that we want to achieve this incredible state where we're the most reliable guides in the universe, where we have no more afflictive obstructions, no more obstructions to omniscience. We don't have any hindrances whatsoever in being the happiest, greatest helper in the universe. We recognize that we're doing this. We want to achieve this state for everyone's sake so that we can really help them. We recognize our own sufferings, and we recognize that everyone else has to endure these same things too. And when we get really good at understanding our own suffering, then and only then can we get good at understanding what others have to endure. And here we are with the opportunity to do that. So let's set this motivation that we're here tonight in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Even if it's in a contrived way, we'll eventually feel this spontaneously, and it'll be a main mind, and it'll be the only way our mind works. Our mind will only move from helping to helping to helping to helping, and that helping, that response will cause us more joy than anything that we've ever experienced in our life. Once we remove the things that keep us from finding joy in helping others, like namely that self-cherishing attitude that comes to us over and over again, empty-handed, and we say, this is the thing that has something to offer me when it's only giving me pain and suffering throughout my whole life. And let's rejoice in the fact now that we have these teachings in our life. We have the stages of the path to enlightenment, uh, um, practices and tradition that's been passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni. And we know that it's an accurate tradition. It's an accurate tradition because it's in a lineage that passes all the way back to Buddha Shakyamuni. And we can go from my teacher's teacher. We were just talking about this before we started class today, that this lineage is so precious. This lineage traces back all the way to Buddha Shakyamuni because my teachers eventually end up with the name Buddha Shakyamuni, eventually end up with the name Arya Nagarjuna, eventually end up with the name Arya Sangha, eventually end up with names like Mahasiddhi Saraha, Mahasiddhi Matripa, and Mahasiddhi Tilopa, and Naropa, and Jetsun Milarepa. Eventually, they end up at these names when we say my teacher's teacher's teachers. So we're from this beautiful lineage that passes all the way back to Buddha Shakyamuni. And not only that, we can say, oh, this teaching that we're hearing is something that Buddha said. We can say that this teaching that we're hearing has been cut and rubbed, has been analyzed, has been checked, has been put into its categories in terms of definitive and interpretable doctrines by the Nalanda Pandits, by the Indian commentators, by these incredible Indian scholars in the monasteries like Nalanda and Vikramalashila in ancient India. So this is a Dharma not only that we find passes all the way back to Buddha Shakyamuni, but it's also a Dharma that's been cut and rubbed, has been checked by these incredible pandits, and we can check their work. We can look at their work and discover these teachings for ourselves based on their accurate instructions. And the other quality is that this teaching that we're listening to is a teaching that produces realizations in the minds of those who practice it. It actually works. We can actually see examples in our world, like His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama and my root teacher, Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, before he passed. He was such a clear example of someone whose mind had been ripened by the teachings, who's someone who is really a very different individual than everyone else that you come in contact with, everyone else that hadn't been touched by this tradition. And you looked at them versus my root teacher, who I was with 25 years. You look at these two, and they're very different. And the one thing that's different is the reliance upon these instructions that produce realizations in the minds of practitioners. So we have these incredible teachings that go back to Buddha Shakyamuni. They've been checked. We can see the checking that's been done and see if it makes sense to ourselves. And these teachings actually, we can see, have been experienced by individuals who are in our world right now. We know that these teachings are complete. So not only are they accurate, not only are they authentic, but they are complete. They're complete because they contain all of the teachings of Sutra and Tantra, all of the teachings that the Buddha ever gave. We see all of the teachings for beings of small and medium and great capacity, everything. The teachings of the Hinayana and the teachings of the Mahayana would fall into the two categories of the perfection vehicle and the resultant vehicle, or the tantric vehicle. We know that the stages of the path to enlightenment contain everything. So not only is it an authentic doctrine, it's a complete doctrine. And we see in the Lamrim tradition, there's a Geshe Tolungpa, who is quoted saying that whenever I give these Lamrim teachings, people get a conceptual understanding of all of the scriptures. And the scriptures feel like, oh, this old white-haired Geshe has just plucked out our hearts. You see this quote a lot in the Lamrim, like, and you think about it, like this Lamrim that Lord Atisha brought, kind of put into these categories of teachings for beings of three capacities based on, the analysis that, came out of the Vikramalashila and Nalanda tradition about the actual Buddha's word. Yeah, you see this, and it's just absolutely amazing. That we have this presence, that we have this ability to learn a teaching that goes from where someone like me is at, that's so complete, to omniscience, to like the teaching that someone on the 10th bodhisattva ground is going to need to cross the ground, to go into the Vajra like equipose at the last moment of the path of meditation on the 10th bodhisattva ground, to go into complete Buddhahood, to cross that satsam, to cross that line. From someone like me to someone like that, there's nothing incomplete. There's everything is present within this tradition. So we say it's authentic and it's complete. It produces these realizations in the minds of its disciples, in the minds of practitioners, because it's complete. It's not something that we have to then bow down to something external. It's something that we internalize and discover for ourselves. And that's what's amazing about the Buddhist teachings. The Buddhist teachings are never asking us to have blind faith. The Buddha said, just like a goldsmith who's, somewhere, this is being kind of loose with the translation, somewhere where they're selling a bunch of fake gold, and this goldsmith needs to buy some gold, and he doesn't want to buy fake gold. And at this market where they're selling fake gold, they also sell real gold. That goldsmith is going to make sure he or she checks to make sure that it's authentic, make sure that it's real gold, and to make sure that it makes sense to buy it based on it being real. We have to make sure that these teachings make sense to practice based on them logically rubbing out and making sense to our own minds, and discovering in our own way that, yes, this makes sense, and you go from this idea of doubt, like, I'm not really sure, to, yes, this makes sense, but you don't even necessarily have a reason for it. Even though you're right that it does make sense, you don't know why. So we have to keep taking it further and further and further to a complete discovery based on a correct sign, and then a direct experience from that analysis based on correct signs that makes us conclude that these teachings make sense, that makes us conclude that we should engage in this practice. So the Buddha isn't asking us just to show up because he's got 32 major marks and 80 minor marks, and he's really a sight to behold. The Buddha is asking us to show up again and again and again based on our own analysis and our own understanding of what he or she, in some cases, said, to make us evolve. And we have to see whether these are evolving instructions or not. Are these instructions that will allow us to evolve? We have to check it. We have to do the experiment on ourselves. This is like you're doing an operation on yourself and seeing how it's coming out. You're doing this experiment on your own mind, and you're the witness to the experiment, and you're saying, hey, is this making my afflictions decrease? Is this making my virtuous qualities increase? This is how Lord Atisha said you could differentiate between Dharma and not Dharma. Is it bringing down my afflictions? We are the ones who check this out. But we can't really honestly say if it is or it isn't unless we're practicing, unless we're actually doing exactly what the instructions say to do on our cushion and off of our cushion in order for these discoveries to happen. So we're the ones that are the best judge, but only a good judge if we're practicing. Not a good judge if we're just naysayers and have a closed mind and think that we're really super smart and can twist our ways intellectually out of anything without really even knowing what we're talking about clearly. So we need to know what the Buddha said, have the wisdom arisen from hearing, and then the wisdom arisen from analysis, where we're really checking it to see if it makes sense. And then once we discover that it does logically, then we apply it in meditation and make our minds take on the aspect of these teachings, make our minds become like running, make our minds run like in terms of how they're operating, from moment to moment, with the thoughts that we find in the Lam Rim, with the thoughts that are not kind of mutually exclusive with the truth, with thoughts that are, concordant with the truth, that make sense with the truth. Most of the time we're dwelling in things that are, contradictory to the truth. A self-cherishing attitude is contradictory to our goal of happiness. The self-grasping ignorance that we have is contradictory to reality altogether. We walk around with a belief in our minds about things, about a mode of existence that they have that's totally untrue, that doesn't exist. They have a mode of existence, and that mode of existence is subjective existence, and it does exist. But we think it has an objective existence right within the object that's actually incorrect. So we're walking around with all of these things that need to be corrected. And when we start to investigate what the Buddha had to say about these things, we can say for ourselves, yeah, this makes sense. I do feel like this about the eye. And you know what? That doesn't make sense. If what the Buddha said and I engage in the analysis about the eye that the Buddha told me to engage in, the way that I feel about myself and who I am doesn't make any sense, even though it naturally occurs. I don't even have to think about it. I have a natural experience that there's this thing there that exists right in here somewhere. There's like an operator, like my teacher was saying today. I feel like there's some operator that's like, put your hand up, think about this, think about that, that there's some self in there that is like an operator that has some intrinsic existence. But the self, once I come to investigate it thoroughly, and what we'll come to learn out is something that's merely imputed on a collection, on a whole bunch of causes and conditions, and a whole bunch of parts and so forth that become a whole. And then there's a name or an imputation, a feeling that's put on this situation. It doesn't just mean it's a name. Naming isn't all we have to get out of. We have to get out of this feeling that there is this I that isn't just a construction of our experience. We have to come to the conclusion that there's just a subjective I that does exist, but the I that we grasp at as being intrinsically existent doesn't exist. So Buddha, who came to talk to us about selflessness, that we'll talk about when we read the Heart Sutra, never came to tell us that there's no self talking to you right now. That may sound shocking to those of you who are studying Buddhism on like AI or on some of the applications where people really don't know what they're talking about when it comes to selflessness. And even some folks who are supposed to know what they're talking about when it comes to selflessness really don't. And that's not me being judgmental on a pedestal. That's me saying that there are specific tenet systems that the Buddha taught about emptiness. The Buddha taught about selflessness. The Vaibhashika system, the Sautrantika system, the Chittamantra system, the Madhyamaka system. The Buddha taught so many different things and levels of dependent origination and levels of selflessness. So in order to really conclude what the Buddha was talking about when he said no self, we have to know what the Buddha was talking about when he said no self. We have to be able to look at the massive amounts of scriptures and look at those Indian commentaries I spoke of that tore apart the teachings and put them into categories that made sense in terms of tenets. And then Lord Atisha put them in categories that make sense in terms of practice, in terms of the teachings shared in common for the teachings for beings of three capacities. So we're so fortunate to have this very specific information that shows us how to specifically go from where we are to the highest state that a mind can achieve, and that's Buddhahood. And every mind has the potential to achieve Buddhahood. We all have Buddha nature. We all have this mind that can evolve, that isn't stuck, that isn't permanent. This mind is impermanent, and that's not what makes it possible for us to become a Buddha. The mind is empty of intrinsic existence and isn't stuck in a state of negative, because our mind, when we look at its most subtle nature, is in the nature of clear light and unsullied, and all of the stains, all of the negativities, all of the afflictions, these are just add-ons. These are adventitious. These are things that are not the nature of our mind. And if something's not the nature of something else, it can be distilled. We can distill it. We can purify it. If the stains aren't the nature of our mind, if the ignorance isn't the nature of our mind, the afflictive obstructions aren't the nature of our mind, if the obstructions to omniscience aren't the nature of our mind, we need to figure out how to get the mind to the place where it doesn't have those things that are making us miserable. If the mind isn't in the nature of being miserable, and we know that we have happiness sometimes and suffering sometimes, so we know that this is always changing, and there's degrees of happiness and degrees of suffering. So we see there's this not static situation. We've got to figure out how to get it moving always towards the goals that we want of happiness. If somehow or another a happiness has been created, it means that there's been a cause for that happiness. And if there's higher states of happiness we've had, then that means there's better causes that made them. Why couldn't there be states of happiness that we can't even imagine because we haven't created the kind of causes that would make it happen? Why not? Why not? When we see that we can do certain things and have an effect of happiness, why not? We know that all results are concordant with their cause. We know that there has to be something that came about before to make my experience happen. And this is what the Buddha came to find out. The Buddha came to find out that all composite things are impermanent, which means that everything that is impermanent has a cause and is a result itself. And the main thing that the Buddha really, really figured out is that contaminated things are the nature of suffering. Not everything is the nature of suffering, just contaminated things. So contaminated causes create contaminated results. Uncontaminated causes create uncontaminated results. Wow. So if everything comes about through a cause, and there's contaminated ones and contaminated ones cause this suffering no matter what, and uncontaminated ones cause happiness, cause the lack of suffering. Yeah. So it's just that kind of logic that the Buddha came to present, not some woo-woo tradition that's weird where you just kind of empty your mind. No, you go to war with what's wrong with your mind and you defeat it. It's not a lackadaisical thing. It's not staying in the moment. The moment, like if you're a sheep headed to slaughter, you could be in the moment following the person who's about to slaughter you around like they're your best friend because your ignorance is there in the moment. Yeah. And then you get slaughtered. That's what we do. Our ignorance is always there in the moment. We just keep getting slaughtered. We keep shucking off bodies. And we think this is the only one we have because we think we're an operator. Yeah. And the Buddha came to tell us that we're not. Yeah. Sorry for the long introduction, but these teachings are just so beneficial. Imagine the merit field and the space in front of you, those holy beings that we're talking about, those enlightened beings who've removed all of the things that you want to remove, that remove contaminated causes, have removed all of the cooperative conditions that make the karmas throw us into samsara. Those beings in the space in front of us, the extensive deeds lineage, the profound view lineage, the lineage of blessings, those holy beings, the Nalanda tradition. I feel like I have no choice because we're talking about, well, what does this mean that it's been torn apart by these enlightened masters? So let's imagine them in the space in front of us. Imagine that you're all the Buddhas, imagining your root lamas all in the space in front of you, imagining His Holiness the Dalai Lama, imagining Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, all the root lamas, of course, imagining Buddha Shakyamuni, imagining Buddha Shakyamuni passing down the lineage of the extensive deeds lineage to Jetsun Maitreya to Lord Maitreya. So from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya to Arya Asanga to Acharya Vasubandhu to Acharya Dignaga, to Acharya Dharmakirti, to Arya Vimuktasena, to Acharya Haryabhadra, to Acharya Gunaprabha, to Acharya Shakyaprabha, then to Lama Salingpa, then to Lord Atisha, then to Master Drontompa. Are you hearing? These are the beings that tore apart these teachings that we're relying upon. They're not just one or two people who kind of knew their stuff. Check out the works that these beings that I'm saying the names of wrote, and you will be astonished at the amount of information in the Tanjora, which is the authentic Indian commentaries, that there is about the sutras and tantras, about the Buddha's word. Those 108 volumes of the Buddha's word, check out the 213 authentic Indian commentaries written about those things. And then the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Arya Nagarjuna to Buddha Shakyamuni to Arya Manjushri and Arya Nagarjuna, and Acharya Arya Deva and Acharya Buddha Palita, and Acharya Chandrakirti and Bodhisattva Shantideva and Acharya Baba Vega and the great master Chandarashita and Acharya Kamalashila, and again from the Bodhisattva Bodhicitta lineage, seeing Master Salimpa and Lord Atisha and Drontompa. These are the beings that I'm talking about, like Arya Nagarjuna and Arya Sangha. These are the beings that I'm saying rely upon. You know, not just this guy who sounds good on TikTok. Arya Nagarjuna, Arya Sangha, and then the lineage of blessings from Lord Vajradhara, passed down to masters like the Mahasiddhi Saraha, Mahasiddhi Matripa, Mahasiddhi Tilopa, Mahasiddhi Naropa, Jetsun Lotsawa Marpa, Jetsun Milarepa, Jagan Popa, all these incredible, incredible beings. And then we look at all these beings that then go down through the old Kadampa lineages. We said Geshe Tulumpa, the old white-haired Geshe plucked these out. The old Kadampa lineages, all of these things that we're quoting, they're all our spiritual family. The Nyingma masters, Padmasambhava and so forth, the Sakya masters, Satya Kunganinko, Satya Randawa, Sakya Pandita, the Kagyu masters, Lord Jetsun Milarepa and Jagan Popa, and imagining the Karmapas, the Galupa lineage, Lama Tsongkhapa, Kirtupje, Jelsupje, Basu Chuji Jetsun, Penchen Son Andrapa, Jayan Sheba, Gonchu Jimmy Wambo, Janja Rupi Dorje, Jayan Gapi Lodru, all of the Dalai Lamas, the Panchen Lamas, all of these holy beings that we have access to the information of, and we have been studying every week since Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche got here in 1997 or so, 1998. Every week we've been studying this, studying. We're still studying, and it's still working, and it's still better and better and better and better. All of these holy, holy beings in the space in front of us, and imagining highest yoga tantra, performance tantra, action tantra, all the protector deities, 35 Buddhas, imagining them space in front of us. Now, inviting all sentient beings to be our guests. We said, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. When we first started this teaching, the first thing we did is we set our motivation and we said, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Now invite every single sentient being here to be your guest, friends, strangers, those beings who you find difficult, enemies. And you'll see in this in the King of Prayers, the Sanchu Mulam, where there's an aspiration to be able to speak in the language of all beings in the future, because the Buddha has the 60 melodious rhythms of speech that has the ability to speak in the language of every single sentient being and tell them exactly what they need to know. And if everyone in the whole universe asked a question simultaneously, the Buddha's answer would suddenly come accurately in their language to them in a way that will help them evolve. So we see that there's this speech, but who are we speaking to? When we say we invite all of these beings in here, in the Sanchya Molam, it talks about it. It's not just talking about friends, having all your friends here to make sure they have a good time. It's saying invite the demons also. So this is what we're doing. Everything that we're doing on Thursday nights is found in scripture. We're doing it for a reason. I'm not making it up. It's not something that I think's neat and let's try it out. These are all things that are found solidly rooted in scripture. So let's listen to the King of Prayers and what this says. And while we're doing this, imagine that you're inviting all sentient beings, friends, neutrals, enemies, and then those that you can't even really identify, hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, demigods, gods, all 6 realms of cyclic existence. Imagine that you've invited here to share the teachings with them, because eventually you'll be able to meet with all of them and help all of them. And the way that you set your mind up to do that is doing what we're doing right now. So it says in the language of the gods, okay, I love them. The Nagas, okay, the snakes in the trees. Well, the Nagas did bring the perfection of wisdom sutras and yaksas, okay, you know, in the language of demons and humans too. In however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. So that's from the Sanche Molan. So imagine that we invite all sentient beings here to be our guests, and that they too then experience the merit field, and they see all of the beings in the space in front of them, all those holy beings that I just mentioned, and they're just there, and they're radiant, and the sentient beings imagine that when you bring them here, that their suffering is quelled just for a moment, enough so that they can actually listen, so that they can actually hear what we're teaching. We're here this in this. When you're inviting them and imagine that you're cooling their suffering off, you're reinforcing within your mind that the Dharma is what cools off the suffering. The Dharma is what cools off a worried mind. The Dharma is what pacifies everything that's wrong with cyclic existence. So when you imagine them coming here and achieving a state of open-mindedness and pacified from the hell beings, hot and cold sufferings and occasional sufferings, and the hungry ghosts, thirst and hunger sufferings, and all of these things have been caused by self-grasping ignorance and the self-cherishing attitude. And here we're talking about what combats those things. And that's how you get rid of, that's how you pacify those experiences, because those experiences are brought on with the cooperative condition of the self-grasping ignorance, and they cannot occur without that cooperative condition. So if we could then somehow get every single sentient being in the universe to realize emptiness, they'd never, ever create the karma again to experience suffering. And then eventually would never experience suffering again, and eventually, after removing the obstructions to omniscience from the 8th, 9th, and 10th bodhisattva ground, after completing that, have the highest state of happiness and reliability in the universe. This is what we're talking about. So now imagine the space in front of us turns into Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, where the Heart Sutra is being taught. The Heart Sutra is teaching the definitive truth about all phenomena, that all phenomena lack intrinsic existence. All phenomena exist, but they don't exist the way that we think that they do. We have to study for years and years and years and years to find out what that means. Not like hear a couple sound bites or hear somebody say something interesting on an application. We have to study for years and years and years and years to find out what that means exactly, that things don't have intrinsic existence. They have existence, but not intrinsic existence. They have subjective existence, not objective existence. We have to come a conventional existence and not an ultimate existence. Emptiness doesn't exist ultimately. So this is what we have to come to find out, because emptiness is empty. So it's not like we're discovering something that is, anything more than a non-finding of something we think is always there. This intrinsic this intrinsic beautiful car, and these sorts of things. And when we invite all sentient beings here, we have to be able to figure out how in our minds we can come to the conclusion, because we've supposedly meditated on what suffering is, how in our minds we can come to the conclusion that we need to help these beings that are in the hell realm, burning, okay, if there were such beings, or the worst thing you can think of you've ever seen in your life in the human realm, how we can equally think that they need help, and somebody who just won the lottery driving with the person in the passenger seat of their Lamborghini that they love more than anything in this world. How do I realize I need to call the person who's in conventional terms seems totally satisfied? How can I come to terms with the fact that they're equally suffering like someone who's in hell? This is what the name of the game is here, because we deep down in our hearts think that, oh, just like a little bit better this or that, and things will be okay, when really it'll never be okay in samsara. Never, ever, ever, ever. So we'll read the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. This is known to serve to purify, to remove obstacles, and then we'll get right into the body of the teaching. I have a bunch of stuff to present, so I think that we'll just go for it. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha monks. And a great gathering of the Sangha Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way, he saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita, address in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation, there is no impurity and no purity, there is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye, dhatu, up to no nine, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind, consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that comes all suffering should be known as true, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi. Praise noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Galajabene chotampane, ngushe duchu ngayi dudu, jendru babalama yi bushinzi, nisungandro so la shatse lo, agasamara tishandra samara vyaga samara chandra. Agasamara Jana Samara Vede Adonga de Gati Baragati Barasanga de Badizo, Ababagoja Sanjiga, Demi Doji, Labadoji, Mebadoji, Shawadaji, Dragi Baja Medavisha, Danji, Jeringario, Agerin, Danjaji, Shawada, Medun, Bejan, Wada, Tumbaji, Bonsoji, Daji, De John, Denda de Lejo. A request for teaching, an outer mandala offering a perfect universe. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lama's eye, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love. Let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I accumulate by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. If you are attached to this life, you are not a spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you are attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. Okay, so we'll read the source of all my good, the foundation of all good qualities. We'll read it in its entirety. We talked about this being a teaching that encompasses all of the teachings of Sutra and Tantra. The Lamrim takes us from the place where we need, as a starting point, which is a teacher, all the way to the final completion stages that we will need to do if we want to become a Buddha. So this Lamrim text takes us from point A to point B in an unmistakable way, in a very abbreviated way, but it abbreviates what can be found in the larger Lamrim. So let's read it. The source of all my good. The source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him with all my strength and reverence. Bless me first to realize that the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I have died, the things that I've done, those white and black deeds, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Knowing this, grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrong of the many wrongs that we do, and try to carry out each and every good of the many that we can. Bless me to perceive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life, right? Like the partner you've always wanted driving in a Lamborghini after you won the lottery. I can never get enough of them. Even that won't be enough. I won't be satisfied. They can't be trusted. They're the door to every pain I have. Grant me then instead to strive for the happiness of freedom. It's just so clear, the instructions in here, when we look at the three types of suffering and the suffering of change, how we really trust that suffering of change, but we shouldn't. That contaminated happiness, those contaminated happy feelings and the main minds and the accompanying mental factors, and actually the object of our desires and our hatreds and stuff. The desires really is what we're talking about, the things we want. They just bring us pain, and we don't think that they do. Grant that these pure thoughts that understand, okay, this is the way things really are, lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should actually be doing. Since like I can't trust everything I usually go to, I should recall that and then do something that will make me actually land somewhere I can trust. May lead me to be watchful and recall what I should be doing. I want to land somewhere trustworthy. The Dharma is trustworthy. Samsaric stuff should be shucked off. It's not trustworthy. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality the essence of my practice. They're the root of Buddha's teaching. I first have to start with abandoning evil, making as the foundation of my life, abandoning non-virtue. Here it says the pratimoksha vows, the individual liberation vows. Make them the essence of my practice, which upon them the highest higher training and concentration and wisdom can be built. And then I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. So I've recognized that this is a suffering life. Not all life is suffering. Samsaric life is suffering. Bless me to see that every living being, everyone my own mother, has fallen into. This is what we're going to talk about tonight. Grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. Grant me to bless me to see clearly that the wish itself is not enough. For if I'm not well trained in the three moralities, I cannot become a Buddha. Grant me then a fierce resolve to master the Bodhisattva vows. Grant that I may quickly gain the path where quietude and insight join together, one which quiets my mind from being distracted to wrong objects, the other which analyzes the perfect meaning in the correct way. Grant that once I practice well the path shared and become a vessel that is worthy, I enter with perfect ease the way of the diamond, highest of all ways, holiest door to come inside for the fortunate and good. Bless me to know with genuine certainty that when I've entered thus, the cause that gives me both the high attainments is to keep my pledges and my vows most pure. Grant me then always to keep them, even at the cost of my life. Bless me next to realize as well as I can the crucial points of both the steps, the essence of the secret ways. Grant me then to practice as the holy ones have spoken, putting all my effort in and never leaving off the practice of the 4 times highest that there is. Bless me, grant me that the spiritual friend who shows me this good road, all my true companions in this quest, live long and fruitful lives. Bless and grant me that the rain of obstacles, things within me or outside me that could stop me now, stop and end forever. In all my lives, may I never live apart from my perfect lamas. May I bask in the glory of the Dharma. May I fulfill perfectly every good quality of every level and path, and reach then quickly the place where I become myself the one who holds the diamond. Yeah, we're really fortunate. So we've been looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment under the section where we see the awakening mind, bodhicitta. How do I get bodhicitta? Once you get bodhicitta, you become a bodhisattva. So this means the same thing. How do I become a bodhisattva? How do I get bodhicitta? This means the same thing, because the moment you have actual, real, not contrived bodhicitta, the actual generation of aspirational bodhicitta, at that moment, you're considered a child of the conqueror. And you find that in Bodhisattva Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara, a child of the conqueror. And this means a bodhisattva. The moment this mind arises, you become a bodhisattva. And we know that it's only bodhisattva path that gets you to complete Buddhahood, where all of your potential is realized, and where you've fulfilled all of your needs and everyone else's needs. It's only that. So you know that it's the bodhisattva path. It's the only path that leads to the highest state that your mind can achieve. And the bodhisattva is path. You enter it when you generate this aspirational bodhicitta. So how does one do this? So there's two methods for achieving it. The method passed down from the extensive deeds lineage from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya and Arya Sangha, called the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And then the practice of equalizing and exchanging self with others, passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Arya Manjushri and Arya Nagarjuna and Bodhisattva Shantideva and so forth, all passing down through Lama Salimpa and Lord Atisha and eventually into our laps. So we have these two traditions, and we've been looking at the tradition passed down from Lord Maitreya to Arya Sangha, called the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And we've arrived at step 5. So there are 6 causes and 1 result, 7-point cause and effect, 6 causes, 1 result, 1 actual pre-step not included in that enumeration. So we have a pre-step of equanimity, where we get an equal, non-biased attitude that's generated. We went over this extensively in relation to friends, neutral beings, and enemies. So we've developed this as a pre-step so that we can then eventually start to move our mind towards an attitude that's intent on others' welfare. So we went through the steps to get there, to this attitude, working at this attitude intent on others' welfare. We got to love, which is the 4th step, by the 3 steps of recognizing sentient beings as our mother, remembering their kindness, and wishing to repay their kindness. And then we went over this first step, and under this section of the development of the attitude of being intent on others' welfare, of the cultivation of love, and now we're on the cultivation of compassion. We came to find out a little bit about compassion. We've sorted out what it means. Compassion has an object, and then compassion has a subjective aspect. So we know that the object of compassion is sentient beings who are experienced among the 3 types of suffering. And then we later on find out that we also look at all the different types of suffering, and they all can be encompassed within these 3 types of suffering, but we can expand it when we look at the general and specific sufferings of cyclic existence. And the subjective aspect is these beings that are suffering under the sway of these 3 types of, who are experiencing 3 types of suffering, I think subjectively, I think, oh, how nice it would be if these beings were free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May I cause them to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. So this is the kind of mind that you have. So I just wanted to get the technical details down. We've already read the whole section in the Lamrim Chemo, but now we're going to dance. Now we're going to dance a little bit. Okay, so we were looking at the great master Pabunka Rinpoche's liberation. I need like a table. Liberation in the palm of your hand, liberation in our hands. This one translated by the great Lotsawa Art Engel. This is the volume 3 of the 3-volume series of Pabunka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. Michael Richards also has 1 volume that's translated in 1 book. It's a little different translation. We're reading from Lotsawa Art Engel's text right now. So we're reading from that right now, and we were in this section that got very kind of graphic. If you remember from last week, it talks about, okay, how, Pabunka Rinpoche jumps right into it. Okay, so how do we meditate on compassion? It says, okay, I'm gonna tell you a technique that'll enable you to generate it more easily. And it goes right to, okay, imagine, let's see, it says a sheep that's in the process of being butchered. So it takes your mind right to that. And I was wondering, I was looking at where is this tradition coming from? Because normally, like, we're starting out, we're thinking about those we're closest to. Like, we've been practicing this over and over and over again. And now it's saying, like, just start out with this like horrible experience of suffering that you can think of. So I was looking at the Lamrim Chemo, and I was looking at Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsun's Easy Path and the Panchen Losang Yeshe's Swift Path. And then also looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chemo and finding out how to like make it all like mesh. How does it make it all make sense? So this is what I've came to the conclusion of. So yeah, this is my conclusion. This isn't something I heard before. So in Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, it says the way to cultivate compassion is as follows. Consider how these living beings, your mothers. So we've already concluded the sentient beings are our mothers. We remember their kindness, wish to repay their kindness. We're not reliving that. We've already made this conclusion that everyone in the universe has been our mother. So you're calling them your mothers at this point. So they have to all experience general and specific sufferings after falling into cyclic existence. I've explained these sufferings earlier. Moreover, if you've developed an awareness of your own general and specific suffering by training on the path of a person of medium capacity, you'll assess your own situation and then cultivate compassion towards others, because you'll know they're equally in hot water, equally in a very bad situation. So then in the tradition of this Pabonka Rinpoche and then Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsun that we're going to read, it starts with this very, very graphic situation. And the way that it goes in this, it's to try to make your mind have an experience of compassion that you can actually feel. And if you think about something, some innocent being undergoing an immense amount of suffering, it gets your mind into the place of wanting a being to be free from suffering. So it's a really actually like a technique to use first, making a scene of desperation, a scene of despair. In Panchen Losang Yeshe's text, it calls this first category seeing sentient beings who are in despair. And it says that this allows you, Pabonka Rinpoche says that by doing it like this, you'll quickly be able to generate compassion, because now you've really thought about what a suffering that you know about is like. And then you start to then can start to apply all of the other things that you've heard about. You think about this sheep that's going to be slaughtered, and then you think like, oh, this mother of mine is being slaughtered, is undergoing this horrible situation. And it got worse before that. Before that, in previous lives, they were even hungry ghosts. Before that, they were even this. So now you're doing what Lama Tsongkhapa says. You're thinking about the general and specific sufferings of cyclic existence. You're thinking about this being that's in despair now and has been in despair before, and they're your mother. They're in despair now and have been in despair before, and you haven't done anything up to this point to help them. So powerful to generate this idea in your mind. And it says, we read about it. And if you look at actually, not to bring in the Zapacha Rinpoche's words of my perfect teacher, this part where you meditate on sentient beings who are in despair is very graphic. You think that Pabonka Rinpoche's part's graphic. It's very graphic. And then it says, it goes to now think about that horse that you're riding and the weight you put on their back and that thing you put on their nose and how they aren't. Think about that suffering. Think about the suffering you're giving them. And it's amazing. And then it talks about, and then this sheep that you're leading to slaughter and that you start to bleed out beforehand so that you can collect the blood to make your blood sausage that you mix with its intestines and you mix with its flesh. Yeah. Really, the words of my perfect teacher gets extremely, extremely graphic. And you see that it's so that you get your mind in a place where oh my God, I can't stand this suffering. I can't stand that a being is suffering. So it says, and this is in the Easy Path. This is translated by the great Dr. Thupten Jimba. It's in this book, Stage of the Path of Oral Transmission. A bunch of Lamrim texts and also Guru Devotion texts and Mahamudra texts in here. Amazing book. So in this Easy Path, it says, because the Panchen Lamas, they integrate all of the Tantra and Sutra into the path at every level. It says, first visualize the Guru deity at your crown and cultivate compassion for sentient beings who are in desperate distress. So you see right in the Panchen Lama's text, it doesn't go to your friends first. It's trying to invoke an experience in your mind that then you're going to turn over to your mom. Wow, like the one in this life who you love so much, or whoever it is you identify as that person who you love so much and took care of you as they were when you were vulnerable. So you create this vivid image that it says is of beings who are under desperate distress. So this is a meditation called desperate distress. And you can think of things other than sheep. Think of beings who are being tortured, whatever you need to think of in order to think of a being in desperate distress. And it says, cultivate this image of the person in front of you, just and reflect on the tragic fate as its limbs are being bound, its chest is ripped open, the butcher's arm is extending deep inside its chest, and just deep inside its chest, it's just killing it. And eyeballs rolling wildly as the butcher's killing it. And just how I then think, how I wish this animal would be free from suffering, all the causes of suffering. May it be free from all the causes of suffering. I'm going to help it become free of suffering and all of the causes of suffering. I want to be a cause. I want to make that stop. And then it says, once you experience this, think about others. It says, once you think about this, in here, it says, then think when you have developed great, genuine compassion towards these sentient beings who are, the first, the sheep who's being butchered, then the one who's in the pasture about to be butchered, on the way to the being butchered. Once you've thought about them, then think about these beings who are your mothers, who are being butchered, who are about to be butchered, who were butchered time and time again in the lower realms. Think about that. Think about they were these mothers of yours. Just generally, you're thinking about the hells and generally thinking about these immense amounts of torture that they've had to undergo. And then you're thinking, so this is meditating upon the desperate distress. So this is making your mind build up. Like Lam Rims and this 7-point cause and effect is making your mind get stronger and stronger. These beings were my mothers. I care so much about them. I love them so much. I must have them become happy. I must have them be free from suffering. It has to be powerful. And that's the only way it'll work. So you think about the desperation. And then it says, then you move towards the types of beings who are consuming, who are doing bad things. Very, very, very powerful also. So now you're figuring out how to work with this equanimity and how to work with your understanding of samsara and how to bring difficult beings and how to work. You're learning something here. So now you think about beings who do bad stuff, beings who are involved in horrible actions, it says. Think about beings in front of you that have wrong views, who harm sentient beings, who are seemingly experts in the commission of all sorts of negative activities, negative karma, experts in negative karma. Think about them. And then cultivate this vivid image in front of you of them doing this. And it says, if such is the conduct and actions of these beings who are my mothers. So, okay, you were thinking of people you didn't like because you forgot they were your mothers. This is powerful. They will have no happiness at all, even in this present life. These people who are acting like this, I'm visualizing them. They are going to experience suffering because of what they're doing, and they are unhappy. Because they're acting like this, we know they're unhappy. It's a sign. And the moment they die, they will no doubt be instantly reborn in the lower realms. Once reborn in the lower realms, they have to endure all the manners of harsh suffering for a long time. How I wish, therefore, that they could become free of suffering and all the causes of suffering. So we not only have to wish they're free from suffering, but the great text, and I think in Zapatra Rinpoche's text, it says the causes of suffering, because it will happen again. We can take their suffering away and then turn our backs and it comes back because the causes are still there. May they be free from suffering and all the causes of suffering. I'll help them to be free from suffering and all the causes of suffering. So now you're making sure your mind isn't biased. You're making sure your mind has been primed with sentient beings, equanimity, sentient beings are our mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, and a love through the force of attraction. Like you find them lovable. You're making sure this is accurate. Now, so we looked at Pabunka Rinpoche's text. I've been reading out of Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsun's Easy Path text, and we know that the Swift Path was written by Panchen Losang Geshe. Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsun, fourth Panchen Lama, Panchen Losang Yeshe, the fifth Panchen Lama. So we were just reading out of that. So let's go on to read what Pabonka Rinpoche says. Same thing. You think about all these beings. When you succeed in generating compassion and thinking in this way, turn your attention to beings in the world who are quick to do evil. Contemplate just how there is little difference between them and the sheep that's about to be slaughtered, and about to be slaughtered, because they're like the ones grazing on a mountain. Human beings committing evil deeds, just walking towards their slaughter, walking towards their experience that will be the lower realms. And then it says, now think about your mom. Generate compassion towards her by contemplating how she performs the causes that will bring her suffering in the future. What kind of sufferings? Well, you just thought about them. You are just made sick by sufferings that can occur, and you know your mom will have those if she doesn't get out of cyclic existence. You've already checked, you've already want her to be happy. You want, in her is everyone in the universe. You have an unbiased attitude that recognizes every single sentient being in the universe took care of you when you were vulnerable. And those beings that all took care of you when you're vulnerable, starting with the one that was closest to you that you remember, actually, the one that's in your life now, have this thing that you do too, the general and specific sufferings of samsara, the 8 sufferings, the 6 sufferings, the 3 sufferings, suffering of hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigods, and gods. Your mother has this. And those bad deeds and transgressions, those things that she carries with her, that we all carry with us since beginningless time, these imprints that are ready to explode into suffering are there. And even in this life, we all know we've created causes for suffering in the future. Just for our livelihood, just so we can get our kicks. Reflect on how the 3 types of suffering will be the result. And they're actively pursuing the causes for this now. We'll actively pursue the causes for the suffering in the future. And then greater and greater sufferings will occur. Your mother will, if she lives long enough, go through some really difficult illness, disintegrate, become very sick. And then if you don't figure out a way to help her and she doesn't figure out the solutions that we're coming up with, the lower realms are probably coming. We know that the great master Acharya Aryadeva in the 400 verses says that humans for the most part are involved in ignoble things. Therefore, most ordinary beings go to the lower realms. That's the norm. Maybe we have some special mom that's not an ordinary being. Check. After that, contemplate how all sentient beings experience suffering and generate compassion. So then you move it out. So that's Pabonka Rinpoche's. We'll read more of that later. I just want to keep it going with the Panchen Lama because we're following it. So then it says, once you've gained experience with this, so we thought about desperate beings, and then we thought about crappy beings, meaning people who are involved in really bad stuff. And then we thought about our mother, and we're finding an equality. You see this. Our mother will experience the slaughtering. Our mother has been the crappy being. The crappy being was our mother. The crappy being is our mother. If you were my mother last week, you're still my mother. If you were my mother last week, life, you still say you're my mother. Whose mother? Mine. Who's mine? Well, the mine that identified as I in that life. And that was me. Because there's a continuum of I that's existed since beginningless time. And this is the same I that will become a Buddha. It's just the I right now is a mess. The I is now labeled on top of contaminated stuff. The Buddha's I is labeled on top of not contaminated stuff. Why? Because the Buddha has created uncontaminated causes for the name to be put on uncontaminated stuff and to be named Buddha. Really? The person, my loved one, this mother, constantly strives to care for her beloved ones, fend off her adversities, and is tormented by manifest suffering and the suffering of change. So my mother has no idea that there's this suffering of change thing, that her happiness is actually suffering. And yes, my mother, my actual mother, has blood cancer right now. So yeah, manifest suffering. Not even a brief moment of genuine happiness exists for my mom. That's what the Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsun tells us to think about. All the happiness that we're all experiencing is suffering. We just don't know it. We're so weak. We're so satisfied with dissatisfaction. We're so used to it. We're so used to dissatisfaction. It's incredible. In this life, too, she has been wholly preoccupied with unwholesome activities. The thoughts of virtue have failed to take root in her. Think about ourselves. We're thinking the way most people are thinking. Do we have these huge roots of virtue? We've heard about the Dharma. We know how our minds work. How do we think that the people we love's minds work? Therefore, the moment that she dies, she will be instantly reborn in the lower realms. Unless my mom's a special, not ordinary being. And we're not thinking like this to put down other sentient beings. We've already realized that we're in trouble. We've already realized all of this about ourselves. We're going to the lower realms because we're ordinary. And we're trying to not be ordinary so we don't go to the lower realms. And most of our mothers are not trying to be. Hold on, I'm verifying that I'm not a robot. Oh, come on. No, it just doesn't like whatever I'm doing. Okay, now it likes it. Okay. Yeah. So we're trying to not be ordinary, but becoming not ordinary is really, really hard. I'm feeling pretty ordinary these days. And those who haven't even met with the Dharma, what do you think about that kind of a mind? If we're trying our hardest to work on our afflictions, what about a mind that hasn't met with the Dharma? So then it's therefore the moment she dies, she'll instantly be born in the lower realms. We found this out about ourselves, where she'll have to endure all manner of harsh sufferings for a long, long time. General and specific sufferings of samsara. We know it. We're experts in this. We're supposedly experts in this because we've studied the medium scope, and now we have the audacity to read the great scope because we've mastered the small and medium scope. Yeah. And then we say, how I wish, therefore, if she could be free of suffering and all the causes of suffering. Like, I want her to not be suffering now, but she's got those causes to be in the worst state you could imagine, to be tortured. Like that being that I thought about that's in despair at the beginning. Yeah. May she be free of suffering and all the causes. I'll help her to be free from suffering and all the causes of suffering. We see how this mind is building up, and now we're saying, it's saying like, so then the great Panchen Lama says, then make the supplication, bless me, O Guru deity, that I may be able to accomplish this, and so on. Once you gain experience with this, cultivate it similarly in relation to neutral beings, your enemies, and finally all sentient beings. So it's saying like, it's inferring, because it's saying then cultivate it towards neutral beings. We know that we meditated in equanimity on friends, those who are closest to us, and we started with mom or whoever took care of you when you're vulnerable, and then moved it out to all the beings we consider friends, and then went to strangers, and then went to difficult people. When we did equanimity, we went strangers, friends, difficult people, and saw how our minds reacted differently. But that's another topic. And once you gain experience with friends, then move to neutral beings, and then to difficult people. So it shows how this oral tradition has so many sweet little tricks that allow us to become bodhisattvas quicker. But we will never find them if we don't open up like 10 books. And it sounds like, oh, you have to read so many books. No, 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 no. Once you start to see this whole thing connecting, it'll be like the greatest fun on earth to start to see these connections and to start to see how just incredibly genius Lama Tsongkhapa was to be, and Lord Atisha and the Buddha, to be able to put this together in a package that makes such logical sense, that as as centuries went on, people were realizing these teachings and had tricks to share. And the great Dalai Lama is the first, the great first and the third, and I've read these teachings, the great fifth Dalai Lama, great seventh Dalai Lama, 14th Dalai Lama. We have these incredible, actual experiential writings that, hey, I practice these things. And I found that when I was being creative in my bodhicitta meditation on the 7-point cause and effect for realizing bodhicitta, I did this and my mind went, whoa. And I'm sharing this with you so that yours does too. And it does if I just can't stress this enough. If you actually get up and you sit down and you think about this stuff on a daily basis, I would never tell you to do something I'm not doing. That's what charlatans do. That's what somebody like fake does. I would never say, hey, get up in the morning and meditate on this. I don't have all this information because I'm trying to like show you how many books I can read. I use this in the morning. I use this all day. When I look at a worm, I use this material to try to get to the point where I arrive at that place where Pabonka Rinpoche says we will arrive, where we see a bug and say, mama. We care that much about a bug. We say, oh, my mother is a bug. I must become a Buddha so she's never a bug again. She has no idea she doesn't have to be a bug. She has no idea she doesn't have to experience the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death, and meeting with the unpleasant, and separating from the pleasant, and not getting what you want, and being forced into aggregates. No idea. You don't have to do that. No idea. These beings have no idea that we don't have to have the suffering of uncertainty, not knowing what's next. We don't have to have the suffering of being reborn. We don't have to have the suffering of being dissatisfied constantly. We don't have to have the suffering of having to shuck off this body that we hold so dear. We don't have to have the suffering of going to the high realm and thinking things are great and then all of a sudden crashing into a lower realm of existence. We don't have to have the suffering of not having any friends to travel with when we're ejected from this body. Really. We have a little bit of an idea about these sufferings because we've studied the Lam Rim, thank goodness. We know what the lower realm sufferings are. We know what we're trying to get out of because we've studied the Four Noble Truths in the medium scope. We know what we have to do and how to get out of it. So we know what other sentient beings have to do and how they get out of it. And we come to find out that we can achieve our highest goal by figuring out how to work with each and every single one of them. Completely unbiased, and eventually being able to see that we generate compassion for a bodhisattva on the 10th ground, because they still have the appearance of true existence when they're not in meditative equipoise. We generate compassion for an arhat who's in nirvana because we recognize they're in an abiding nirvana. And Arya Nagarjuna says an abiding nirvana is like a prison without your fullest potential realized, let alone all sentient beings' potential realized. We'll get to come to understand that even those things that we didn't even know were around making problems for us are suffering. And that until you're a Buddha, you'll have them. And I'm not trying to posit that if obstructions to omniscience or samsara or cyclic existence, I understand they're not. I understand that you can be an arhat and not in cyclic existence. But I'm saying one thing about great compassion is that it would have as its object of observation an arhat, because they have not reached the full goal and don't have the amount of happiness that they can. Because they don't know how to help sentient beings, and that's how you get the most amount of happiness. Because they haven't developed the method to help sentient beings enough, the kind of inner science of method of helping sentient beings that gets coupled with the liberating path that allows them to be able to become Buddhas. but we're learning how to become Buddhas. We're so fortunate. It's so rare. And I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to continue to give these teachings. And yeah, we'll look at this time and time again. But I thought that this was a really powerful way to not just start all of a sudden with your mother. Okay, suffering, experiencing suffering, and has to have had experienced suffering. Think about a really gross suffering. And then just think about the fact that that being was your mother. Get really into a gross thing that you can feel. And then think about these, beings who are evil in your mind, and remember they're your mother and know where they're going. They're headed to slaughter. And then think about your mother. It's very, very powerful, because you have to be able to think about the person that you feel that you love, who took care of you more than anyone in this world. You have to be able to have a same kind of feeling of affection for her as you do for those beings that were unruly, non-virtuous beings that you brought up right after the beings that you saw with desperate distress. Then you brought into your meditation those beings who are really, like, you consider evil. And then you meditate on your mother, and you have to be able to, through that process, keep an even keel of non-bias. These are all great indicators for our mind, whether or not we're evolving with these teachings. These teachings are about changing our minds, making our afflictions less, making our virtuous qualities more, abandoning evil, engaging in perfect virtuous actions. The best perfect virtuous actions are the deeds of a bodhisattva, and we're learning how to become bodhisattvas. So that's the step 5, and we'll probably wrap up step 5 next week with a synopsis, and then get into the extraordinary attitude, altruism. Okay, so let me put the books away. So we looked at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment today, if we're looking in historical order. Then we looked at Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsun's Easy Path. And again, Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsun was the tutor of the 5th Dalai Lama. And then the 5th Dalai Lama gave the Panchen lineage Tachi Lompo, which was built by the 1st Dalai Lama. A little bit of history. So then after that, looking at the Easy Path, we were looking at Pabonka Rinpoche's Liberation in Our Hands. So these are all great materials that you can get access to, or every Thursday I'll be reading from and showing how they connect. And I think that we're just going to really be spending at least another year on bodhicitta, because the world is in a place where there's so much bias. Everybody's angry. Everybody has this bifurcation. Their team, that's their team. This is my team. And everybody is more unhappy than they've ever been. And the solution is this mind that's the highest ideal in the universe, and that's bodhicitta. If everybody instantly got great compassion, the step that we're talking about, if everybody had their mind, all the guns would just fall right on the ground. All the weapons would be like, what were these things used for? All the harm that's being done, people would literally, in the middle of doing all the horrible things they do to sentient beings, just stop and then wonder how that they could elevate the sentient being who they were harming. Immediately go from harming to elevation. And this is what Buddhas do. They figure out how to elevate each and every one of us from our place that we're at. All right, concluding mandala offering, dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. And I really want to thank my incredible teachers, Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, and Geshe Lobsang Gonpo Rinpoche, and Geshe Dorje Damdo Rinpoche, and Geshe Umsla Geshe Aga Rinpoche, and Gen Jeffrey Hopkins, Gen Nenden Jambil Drapa, because he really, he talked about Geshe Supa, teaching him how to be a scholar. And that very short period of time, the 2 years that we spent with Gen Hopkins, I just watched him, and I watched him. And I saw what he did before. And I noticed that when he translated the essence of eloquence, Leishin Yimpo, most difficult text considered in the Gelugpa tradition by Lama Tsongkhapa. He used 20 plus commentaries, and it's not a big book, it's little. 20 commentaries. And I used to be exhausted by it when Rinpoche would do it. And something now has changed. And I don't know when, because I was looking at a bunch of text, before. But now it's just such a delight. And using Gen Hopkins as my inspiration just a delight to say, no, I'm not satisfied with partial instructions, because Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak told me, don't be satisfied with partial instructions. Don't think that you got it. Make sure you keep looking. But when I saw what Gen Hopkins did the last, 20 years of his life, 15 years of his life, what it meant not to be satisfied with partial instructions. And this I really aspire to be more like. So I hope I'm bringing this flavor of looking at all of this stuff just from a little ways back, so that we can then be so intimate with this material and really know how to work with it, so that if suddenly all the books in the house burn to the ground, you literally would have enough meditation material for yourself for the rest of your life. If you suddenly had to get locked in a cave, as long as somebody gave you food, you'd be okay. Yeah, you'd be okay. This stuff gets in your mind enough. Yeah, you'd be okay. Any mistakes that I made, may they be purified by this Vajrasattva mantra. I don't believe I've made any, but if I did, I apologize. Om Bentazata Samayam Nipalaya Bentazata Zeno Vajita de me Bavaza da Gaya me Bavaza Bagaya me Bava Anurade me Bavaza Zidi me Brachasava Kama Suchi me Kitam Trian Koro Home. Ha 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 Bhagavan Java da Gata Benza Mame Moka Benza Bava Maha Samaya Safa Aum Vade. So that's the 100-syllable Vajrasattva mantra. In this case, we're using it as the power of antidote. When we look at the 4 opponent powers, the power of basis, the power of regret, the power of antidote, and power of commitment. If I made a mistake, I regret it. I've been teaching the Dharma. I go for refuge, and I make this commitment not to make mistakes. So you can look at the 4 opponent powers of basis, regret, power of antidote, and commitment, and see how to work with those in your life to be able to purify your non-virtues and firmly efface and avert things, as Geshe Langri says in the 8 verses for training the mind, as soon as they come up, and purify them as soon as you possibly can. So now let's recite the Paul and Lama mantra. Rinpoche said is our protector. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. May the supreme bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. In all my lives, may I never be separated from my perfect lamas. May I bask in the glory of the Dharma. May I fulfill perfectly every good quality of every level and path, and reach then quickly the place where I become myself the one who holds the diamond. Through this virtuous action, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead every being without exception into that enlightened state in the heavenly realm of Tibet, surrounded by a chain of snow mountains. You are the source of all benefit and help for beings. All powerful Chen Rezid, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara's end. And a prayer to Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche that I wrote. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om 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 Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Lord Atishu, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. Teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of 3 capacities. Now the sound is stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It's by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be way too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be. Never leave our hearts in crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness so they know who you really are. Okay, we will see you next week. Thank you so much for your patient listening and allowing me to share this Dharma with you. And please do what you can to practice these teachings. I will do what I can to practice these teachings, and we'll make the world a better place by doing so if we can figure out how to, as Guntang Dembe Drome says, leave a virtuous imprint in our mind every moment. And if we could figure out how to do that, that would mean we'd be operating in such a way that everyone would be around us would want to then be better because of seeing what the results of being good are like. So this is how we make the world better. It isn't by lecturing, it's by being an example of what people want to become. Okay, and the way we do that is by studying this and by sitting on our cushions and by little bit by little bit becoming inch by inch by inch by inch better. Better doesn't come about in miles, it comes about in inches, but you put enough inches together, you get a mile. See ya.